I was raised by a domineering bitch of a mother and her flying monkey sisters. Megan was the oldest and 13 years my senior, and I was 10 years older. I guess I was a mistake and not planned, and they all blamed my birth on the separation of my parents. My dad left home in 1977 when I was 5 and never returned. Throughout my childhood, I was bullied both at school and inside the safety of my home. I just wanted my mother to love me, just to pat on my back and tell me that I am here. I am part of the family. Never happened. I was good at studies, and after trying for 12 years of my life, I dedicated myself to studies. Years passed, and in 1993, I found myself at the Kingston University in South London. I was more than happy to be away from my house. Here, I met Holly, and even now I can picture her from back then. She was beautiful, and so confident. On the other hand, was shy and introverted. She was in her final year of a creative writing degree, and I was finishing my master's in mechanical engineering and design. Like I said, I was way too shy to approach her, and she was never short of attention from men. She was 5'5" with brown hair and big brown eyes. The type you could get lost in. She had a nice body, but I knew she was out of my league. The guys who chased her were all outgoing and popular. To my surprise, one of her friends got talking to me at a party, and Holly came over and joined us. I had little experience of women, and I think being humble and bashful made me attractive to her. I managed to build up the courage to ask her out and began dating. I am not ashamed to say that she took my virginity, but after around 6 months of dating, I heard a rumor that she had been screwing around with other guys. I had no way to prove it, and was afraid to confront her. Holly was a spoiled child. Her parents spoiled her and her sister, Caroline, and most of our relationship I had to put up with her acting like a princess. Dealing with Holly was not easy. Whenever things didn't go her way, she would create a scene, even in public, embarrassing me. My friends couldn't stand her, but I was in love, something new for me. After graduation, we found jobs and got a flat outside Southampton. We got married a year later, and soon we had our daughters, Sophie and Avi. Holly loved being a mom and everything seemed great. I got promoted and started working for Walker Engineering, but 2008 hit hard with the economic downturn. Jobs were lost, contracts were tough, and we had to work longer hours with no extra pay. During this time, I realized Holly was having an affair. I confronted her, but she laughed it off. Even though I kept my job and a good salary, the affair left a mark. Despite the challenges, we bought a beautiful house in Southampton. I opened a secret savings account just in case. Things seemed normal for a while, and I focused on being a good dad. I took the girls to various activities while Holly spent time with her friends. I didn't socialize much with the other husbands, as we all seemed to be under our wives' control to some extent. My friends even teased me with the song Under My Thumb by the Rolling Stones when I had to cancel plans for whatever Holly wanted to do. Even at work, my coworkers would comment about Holly's control over me. A few months ago, things reached a breaking point. With both girls away at university, Holly and I were alone for the first time in 18 years. As I helped Evia move into her apartment, she surprised me by asking why I was still with their mother. She mentioned rumors about Holly and a guy named Henry at work. I was shocked and hurt by the news, but I hadn't investigated Holly's affairs over the years to protect our family. I loved what we had created together. Learning about Holly's actions made me realize my daughter's deep disappointment in her. It also stirred up old feelings from my past and made me aware of the open ridicule I faced at work, especially from Henry Walker, who was involved with Holly. Feeling the need to confront Holly, I sat at the kitchen table, heart racing, waiting for her to come home. When she arrived, I struggled to find the words, but she showed no concern. Finally, I asked if she was having an affair. Her response shocked me. She didn't call it an affair, and admitted to wanting more than I could provide. Despite being a good provider and her best friend, she wanted something else, leaving me sickened and in anticipation of her explanation. "You're cheating on me?" I asked, shocked by Holly's bold admission. She replied, "Just my body, not my heart or mind. Those belong to you." I felt dizzy and sick to my stomach. Her shameless attitude left me speechless. "I never deny you sex, Alex. I'm just exploring with a couple of younger guys," she confessed. "What?" I shouted, surprising even myself. Holly walked over and sat across from me, telling me not to shout. "You admit to cheating on me with 2 guys, and I'm supposed to be quiet?" I responded, Holly then dropped a bomb saying, "I love you, Alex, but this is how things are going to be. Live with it, or I'll leave and be with them anyway." It was both a threat and an ultimatum. I sat there, stunned, but Holly's face softened. I thought she had seen my hurt, but instead, she said, "Everyone does it these days, Alex. My friends have had flings with younger men, and they say it makes the marriage better." I couldn't believe it. Holly was trying to justify her actions by saying her friends did the same, and it would supposedly make our marriage better. It felt disrespectful. She didn't care about the marriage or me. She only cared about the comfort and security I provided. I mustered the courage to speak again. "So I can have another woman. Is that what you're saying, Holly?" She looked at me, laughed, and said, "You're right, Alex. Come on, be serious." I sat in silence as she continued to laugh, trying to control herself. Holly continued to mock me, laughing at my struggles with women I had known for years. I felt embarrassed and ashamed, but she wouldn't stop. She made it clear that this was the way things were going to be, and warned me not to mess up my life by complaining or doing something I'd regret. Despite all this, she insisted she was still my wife and loved me, coming home to me every night. She left me at the table, contemplating the mess my life had become. Holly's openness about her actions showed she didn't care about me at all. I was angry, very angry. That night, I couldn't face being near her, so I slept in the spare room. Around midnight, she woke me up, surprised that I wasn't coming to bed. Was she really so oblivious? She accused me of acting like an old man, saying that this was how the world worked now. I said nothing, and she confidently stated that I would come back to bed soon because she always got her way. In reality, she was right. I had been loyal and compliant in our 22-year relationship. Now it was public knowledge that I was under her control and apparently a cuckold too. The next morning I went to the office, only to be greeted by Henry Walker, the man involved with my wife. He smiled and casually asked, "How's your wife, Alex?" "Hope she's good." Henry's smug expression fueled my anger. He looked like he was about to burst into laughter. I didn't say anything, but I heard giggles from other grown men near the coffee machine. They stood their ground as I walked past, feeling like the whole world knew my personal problems. Even Olivia, the boss's secretary, seemed to find my situation laughable. I tried to focus on my work, but the anger lingered. To distract myself, I decided to look into my father. All I knew was that he left us when I was young. Searching family history sites in Cambridge, I found 14 people named James Price born in 1939. I narrowed it down to 3 possibilities and posted messages on genealogy websites in those towns. While contemplating the last 24 hours, my boss Jack called me into his office. Jack was successful but had been married 3 times. He was known for being a cheater and a bully. I didn't know he was involved with his secretary Olivia behind his 3rd wife's back. He bluntly mentioned the rumors about my wife and nephew. In response, I snapped, "With your nephew." Jack laughed it off and said he didn't want the situation to affect the business. He emphasized that family comes first and warned me that if I had a problem, I might have to leave the company. It felt like being scolded by an old school teacher. I bit my lip as Olivia, his eager secretary, hovered by the door, likely collecting information to share with her friends on the factory floor. Leaving Jack's office, I wondered why Olivia, a young woman, would involve herself with someone like him. I heard snickering as I passed her, and with my head down, I walked out. The explosive laughter behind the closing door made it clear they were making fun of me. As I returned to my office, I realized that being there was not helping me. I had supported my girl's education, but now I felt like I was just financing Holly's unfaithfulness. I was a simple guy who liked gadgets but didn't need a big house. Most of my expenses went to Holly's indulgences, weekly hair and nail appointments, her car, phone, and other unnecessary luxuries. Normally happy at work, I was creative and successful. I had designed many parts being produced and sold, but they thought I was too weak. They were right. I wasn't confrontational and never made waves because I was content being good old Alex, the submissive engineer. Looking at my screensaver of the family on holiday, I rolled the mouse and my email opened. A message from Jennifer Holmes at the Cambridge Genealogy Committee surprised me. They had found someone claiming to be my dad's niece, Rachel Murray, my cousin. I sent my number to Jennifer, asking if Rachel could contact me. Leaving work, My spirits were slightly lifted. At home, Holly was cooking dinner, and as I walked in, she smiled and approached me. I moved away, but after a few minutes, I came back for dinner. Holly meekly asked if we could talk about the events from the previous night. What's there to talk about? You made it clear last night? Live with it or else, right? I said. Holly looked at me for a moment, seeming regretful, but it didn't last. She took a deep breath, cleared her throat, and continued, almost pleading. You're a great husband, and you've never denied me anything. Please don't deny me this, Alex. I asked her honestly, if I'm so great, why cheat on me? Why make a fool of me? She became flustered, shrugged, and had no answer. I felt tired of her selfishness. Despite working long hours to pay the bills and provide everything she wanted, I only received disrespect and ridicule in return. I drove an old Range Rover while she had a newer one. Holly admitted, I have needs, and you can't fulfill them. So you either deal with it, as I know you will, or lose me to a younger man. I interrupted. You mean Henry Walker? Just say his name, Holly. Everyone knows he's involved with you. Holly admitted they were lovers, and mentioned that he'd eventually take over the company from his uncle, who was effectively my boss. I remained silent, got up, and walked into my study. The tears came, and I wished to be anywhere else. As the phone rang, I picked it up, hearing a strange voice. Rachel. We spoke for about an hour, and when I hung up, everything else vanished from my mind, and I had a huge smile on my face. Rachel was excited to share a lot about my father and our family history. I discovered that my mom had actually kicked my father out of the house, and she lied to me all my childhood. Sadly, he passed away in 1983 when I was just 11, due to alcohol poisoning. His mother, my grandmother, blamed my mom for his troubles after leaving us. Rachel shared that he longed to be back in my life, but couldn't. We planned to meet at her home in Cambridge over the weekend, and I was excited. It felt like a much-needed break. The rest of the week dragged on, and things at home remained the same. I was still being laughed at behind my back. Henry and his friends thought it was funny to hang knickers on my office door. Olivia said nothing. Inside the underwear was a note saying, "Please return to your wife." It broke me, and I cried at my desk that day. I wanted to blame everyone but myself. I couldn't wait for Saturday to arrive. I told Holly I was going to see a friend in London, and she didn't really care. I assumed she would be doing her own thing. The drive to Cambridge was stressful, and I arrived an hour later than expected. Rachel didn't seem bothered and greeted me with the best hug I had received in years. I met her husband Greg and their 2 young children, Grace and William. After the formalities, we talked about my father and my newfound family. Rachel had a warm and selfless personality, and she and Greg eagerly shared our family story. David and Lucy Price, my cousins, joined us during my visit. We got along well, and David added more information about my father and the family. After lunch, we went on a little trip, and I had the chance to thank them for welcoming me into their lives. When David and I got back, we talked about our jobs and family life. He sensed things weren't good, and for some reason I opened up to my new cousins. They told me not to tolerate it and promised to support me if I needed anything. I felt grateful. Leaving Cambridge, I had a new perspective. Despite being lied to and mistreated throughout my life, my new family showed me more kindness and honesty in a day than most people I had known. I needed to sort out my life and be happy, not just for myself but for my girls, friends, and new family. When I got home after 8 p.m., Holly was getting ready to go out. I asked where she was going, and when I mentioned the names Henry and Max, she seemed surprised. I asked her to stop and be my wife, but she dismissed my feelings. Ignoring my wishes, she continued to threaten me. She walked toward me with open arms, but I turned my back on her. She collected her Prada handbag and headed for the door. I sternly asked her not to do this as her husband. She stopped, looked at me for a moment, and burst out laughing, saying I'd never have the courage to leave her, and she knew I'd always be there for her. I felt really down. Her words echoed in my mind, "No balls. Deny me my pleasures." I always knew she was spoiled, thanks to her parents. I treated her like a queen, but I was the one working hard. I thought she loved me, but I realized I was a fool for too long. It had to end, and I needed to make plans. I wasted no time, and started making moves while she was out with Henry or Max. Maybe they were with her together, fulfilling her desires. I provided everything: safety, security, material goods, and two guys got to be with her however they wanted. My thoughts angered me, and I needed to destroy the last bit of affection I had for her. I found a way. In a box, I found the only picture I had of my mom and sisters. I cut a picture of Holly's face and pasted it next to them. Placing it on the desk in my study, I hoped it would help me let go. Around 12:45 a.m., I finished up, having a plan for the short term. I knew when I might leave, maybe a few weeks away. I had time because Holly wasn't expecting me to go. Oh, it might not work, and I'd need help, but I convinced myself I would go through with it. I heard someone stumbling through the door, and as I looked out the window, I saw Henry Walker's car leaving. I quickly wiped my history as I heard her climbing the stairs. Moving forward, I decided to use incognito mode to protect my online activities. While Holly went into our bedroom, I went downstairs to make myself a coffee. Sitting on the sofa, I thought about my future away from this place. Honestly, without my daughters here, it might not be too bad. I considered moving closer to them. On Monday morning, I went to work with the clear decision that I wouldn't be doing much anymore. Jack Walker could fire me for all I cared. I walked to my office, unaware of any snickering or comments about me. I managed to schedule a meeting with the bank for 1 p.m., using the time before to sort out my finances and prepare. It was a bit risky, but with the right help, I believed I could come out of this situation okay. The meeting went as planned. I closed my savings account, removed my name from our joint account, and withdrew cash from my ISA. On my way back to the office, I stopped at a PC World and bought 2 digital voice recorders, a 500GB USB 3.0 tough drive, and a new PC hard drive. Back in the office, I tried to access the company's private customer files. I had seen them in Jack's office before, so I knew they existed, but I needed his password. It took me about an hour to crack it. His wife's name was the username, and the password was both his name and his 6-digit birthday, Jack 240,656. I attached the drive to my computer and downloaded all the files. 10 minutes later, I did the same with my plans and drawings for the energy-efficient hydraulic pump system I had been working on. We manufactured pumps for air conditioning units, heavy machinery, and the dairy sector. I wiped my PC history, including all my work, shut it down, and replaced the hard drive with a new one. I packed everything into my bag, reinstalled Windows, and spent the rest of the day researching our competitors on my phone. I checked Monster for engineering jobs in the South London, Surrey area, and left for the day. That night, after another silent dinner, I went to my study. I found that one of our main competitors struggling during the financial downturn was looking for a mechanical engineer for basic design and shop floor management. It wasn't exactly what I wanted, but close enough. They offered a salary £10,000 sterling lower than my current one, so I sent an email and included my CV. That night, I decided to sleep in our bed to keep up appearances with Holly. However, I made sure to be asleep when she came in. I felt her trying to be close, but it made me sick. As bad as that was, it pleased me to react that way. I was starting to feel repulsed by her, and strangely, I thought that would help me in the long run. The next day, I got a call from a surprised Robert Williams from Sutton Hydraulics. We spoke briefly, and he couldn't believe I'd consider leaving Walker Engineering for a smaller company. He nearly offered me the job on the spot, but I insisted on an interview the next day. He agreed. Another important piece was in place, and things were moving quickly. With plenty of time on my hands, I started researching flats in the area. I found one just 15 minutes from my daughters and 5 minutes from work. I scheduled a viewing for the next day after the interview with Robert Williams. I spoke to Jack and told him I needed to see my daughters at Kingston the next day to sign some papers. He brushed me off and said to go. That night, I called my best friend Toby Brown. We'd known each other since sixth form, both getting into Kingston, but he studied finance and mathematics. Now, he was a big-time banking analyst in the city. He lived with his wife Sarah and children in Twickenham. The best part was that they both disliked Holly, so we rarely socialized as couples. I arranged to meet Toby the next evening after my interview and flat viewing. He knew I had something on my mind, but I said I'd tell him everything when we met. Before meeting Toby, I talked to my daughters and shared the situation with them. Surprisingly, they were happy and expressed their frustration with their mother's behavior. They pledged their support for me. A day later, I met Toby and Sarah. I shared everything about the first part of my plans. They were more surprised that I was fighting back than by Holly's infidelity, which in their eyes was sadly expected. Sarah asked, "So, are you leaving her now, Alex?" I then told them about the meeting with my cousins, revealing the truth about my dad being kicked out of the house by my mom, and how my sisters took her side. My dad was just like me, or should I say I was like him. But this time, my girls were on my side. "So, that discovery triggered you to finally stand up for yourself?" Toby asked, concern showing on his face. "No. It was when I visited my father's grave. At first I hesitated, but I laid some flowers and said a few words. When I looked at the etching on the stone, it shocked me. That's when I knew I had to leave," I explained. "What was it, Alex?" they asked at the same time. "It had an image of a rose, and below that, it said in loving memory. It had the date of his birth, and below that, the age he was when he died. He died at the age of 44. The age I am now," I revealed. Toby and Sarah recoiled slightly, and I knew they understood. There have been times when I could have reached for the drink like he did or did myself, like my grandmother believed he did. I had a choice. Be like him or fight back, I stated. I decided I wasn't going to kill myself trying to be the perfect husband anymore, being abused and ridiculed in the process. Admitting to my friends how low I had been was harder than I imagined. I confessed, feeling weaker at that moment than I had in weeks. Toby interrupted my mood, asking, "What do you need from us, Alex? Please say no if it's too much, but I have a plan to protect myself and screw the person over," Sarah interjected. I smiled and nodded. Sarah indeed had a tough side to her character. When I thought she was having an affair in 2008, I opened a separate savings account and put all my bonuses and any spare cash into it. Luckily, the only way we could get a mortgage for the amount we needed was if I applied in my name only. Holly had no real work history, so it was just easier for me to apply alone. I knew if anyone was capable of following my train of thought, it would be Toby. I asked Toby to transfer my house's ownership to a new company he would create. Once I pay off the mortgage, I only need to contact the land registry to transfer the deeds to his company. Toby was unsure about it. I explained that Holly wouldn't have money to fight the case, and her parents wouldn't support her if they found out about her actions. They value their ethics more than their daughter. They agreed and offered to help cover the mortgage, saying I could pay them later. On my way home, I visited the local Land Rover dealership. I knew the guy there because I bought Holly's Range Rover Sport about 10 months ago. I still owed money on it. I had an idea to get some more money. I told him I wanted to exchange Holly's car for the latest model. We agreed he would take the Range Rover back, cancel our payment plan, and I promised to return to upgrade my car. He could make up the costs by selling Holly's car as practically brand new. I apologized for any inconvenience, but buying a new Range Rover from me more than made up for it. On the way out, I took a 2016 brochure, not for me, but for Holly. When I got home, Holly was in the lounge nursing a coffee and looking a bit pale. I took off my jacket and threw my bag down. Now, I had to work on the second part of the plan. I told Holly that I still loved her and wanted her to have the best of everything. So, I was going to trade in her car and buy her the new 2017 model in the brochure. She seemed oblivious to my plan and said, "Oh, wow, I love it. You always know how to make me feel better, don't you, Alex?" I replied, "The only problem is they have a buyer for your car already, so I need to get it down there by Friday afternoon. I'll finish work early and take it to the dealership. For the weekend, you can just use mine to go visit your lovers." The final comment made her recoil, and a look of shock and confusion filled her face. I asked, "What's wrong?" She replied, "Nothing, Alex. I just thought you were still angry about our arrangement." "Not our arrangement, Holly. Your arrangement. I had no say in it, remember?" "But guess I have no choice, right?" I said, hoping for a response. She just nodded, as though she had finally put me in my place and I had conceded defeat. "I love you, Alex," she said. I turned to look at her, and a genuine look of concern greeted me. I said nothing in reply, and just walked off into the kitchen. My phone began to ring, and I walked out to the back garden to take it. Toby confirmed the money had been transferred. I was good to go. The next day, I wasted no time entering the bank and was shown into the mortgage specialist's office. An hour later, the mortgage was paid off, and all my remaining accounts were closed. I walked a few doors down and opened a new account with another bank. I was a happy man, knowing that I wouldn't have to pay anything again unless Holly got a solicitor and took me to court. My smile faded. The next day, I contacted the land registry and filled out the appropriate online application. I had all the details of Toby and Sarah's new company, and within 10 minutes of applying, I was sent a confirmation email telling me it would take 3 to 5 days to complete. Once this was done, I would simply hand over the deeds to Toby, and he could register the property to his company. That same day, I knocked on Jack's door. Olivia was in there with him, of course. Fridays were usually the day the dirty old man had his way with her, and I think I disturbed their amorous activities. She left us alone. I placed my resignation down on his desk. He looked up at me with that stupid smirk on his face. "What's this?" he asked. "My resignation," I replied. "I think it's best if I leave straight away. I'm sure with the situation regarding our families, I doubt you want me here too long." He looked dumbstruck. "I'd be grateful if you can get my P45 ready by Monday, and please don't mention this to anyone." "The wife doesn't know," I said brashly. "You can't do this. We need you," he said pathetically. "Not as much as you need your nephew, apparently." "I'll be in on Monday to collect the last of my things," I replied. I pretended to drop a pin from my pocket, and when I bent down, I removed the digital recorder from my sock. I had managed to construct a pin to it, and as I stood back up, I hit record and pushed it up under the seat and into the wooden frame. "If that's all, Jack, I have things to do." "Okay, Alex, but don't come crawling back when you're skint. Your money is the only thing keeping that cheating wife of yours with you. Do you realize that?" "Of course I know that, Jack. I wish my wife was as loyal as yours," I said, smiling. I knew that one hit him where it hurt. I turned and left his office. An hour later, I drove home and picked up Holly's car and logbook. I drove to the dealership and dropped off her car. Thankfully, John Reeves offered to drive me home. I gladly accepted. When I got home that night, Holly was sitting at the kitchen table with big red bags under her eyes. I knew she had been crying. I asked her what happened. She reluctantly told me that she got gonorrhea. I laughed. "Shit, did I laugh?" And she just glared at me. "Well, just take the drugs, and soon enough, you will be back on your back." Feet. If looks could kill, I would be dead already. I slept well that night for the first time in months. Of course, I slept in the spare room. Saturday morning, and I was feeling great. The good night's sleep definitely helped me. And I went into our bedroom and woke Holly in bed to tell her I was going to give her some space to rest and recover. "You think I'm disgusting, don't you?" she said. I said nothing, and suddenly the tears began to flow down her cheeks. "I just want you to get better, that's all." "Oh, Alex, I do love you so much. I think I've messed up big time." At first I felt bad for her, but it disappeared even quicker than I thought it would. That shocked me a little. I realized then I had lost all love for the woman I had been married to for 21 years. Could it really disappear that quickly? Obviously, it could because I was done, and her situation did nothing to slow me down. I left the room after saying nothing. I got into my car and drove away happily. That night I stayed with Toby and Sarah, who threw a dinner party with many of their friends and colleagues in attendance. When I arrived home late Sunday morning, I found Holly up doing housework. I walked into the lounge, and when she saw me, she launched herself at me and hugged me. I just patted her on the back. She asked when the new car would arrive. "I can drop you off in town to meet your sister, and then you can ask her to drive you to the dealership. Then you get to drive back your new Range Rover," I said with an excited grin. She smiled and walked towards me with her arms open. I turned back to the kettle, pretending I didn't see her. For the rest of the day, Holly was all around me, and I actually felt uncomfortable. She kept trying to kiss me or hug me, and I kept making excuses to leave. I think she got the message because as I went to bed, I could see that she had been crying again. "Good night, Holly. Will you be sleeping with me tonight, Alex? I wanted to cuddle up to you, and I want you to tell me everything will be okay." I felt nothing. "Not until you get the all clear from the doctor, Holly." "Sorry, but you made your bed," I said harshly. "Well, when I get better, I'm sure I can find a man who will want to be in bed with me." I have plenty of lost time to make up for, she snapped back bitterly. I laughed to myself. It took longer than I expected, but here it was, and the bitch was back. All those regrets from Friday night had disappeared. For the last 21 years, I would have fallen for her bullshit. But this time I ignored her tears and headed for the spare room. The last night in my house, and it will be in the spare room. I was also glad that she said those things. It removed any sign of any doubt I might have had. I looked at my mocked-up picture of her and my sisters, and all I could feel was hatred for her. She was only sweet when she wanted something and a bitch when she couldn't get it. I woke up early Monday morning. Holly was awake early too for her 8:30 hair appointment, so I drove her into town as planned. I drove off knowing that could be the last time I ever see her. I somehow feared it wouldn't be, but it would be for as long as I could make it so. On the way, I called the mobile phone company and terminated both our contracts. I pulled over into a lobby to pay the penalty on my card. They informed me that the phones would remain in service until 5 p.m. Perfect. Next, I headed for the office to pick up my 45. I entered the factory, and there was a solemn atmosphere. News of my departure must have made the rounds, and for a brief moment I saw a look of fear on their faces. I did not know why. As I walked down the corridor towards my office, I passed the coffee machine where the usual suspects were gathered. I wasn't exactly sure if Max and Henry were aware that they were both screwing my wife or not, but here they were both grinning at me and sharing jokes with the other morons. "Morning, guys," I said gleefully. "Good morning, Alex. How's the wife?" they said to the usual laughter. How this joke was still funny was beyond me. "Oh, not so good, I'm afraid," I replied. "One of you bozos gave her the clap." I walked away to complete silence, and when I turned back, their jaws had dropped, and Max then yelled something at Henry. I heard a big commotion before heading up the stairs. Olivia saw me approaching and gave me a half smile before putting her head down. Maybe now I was getting some respect. Jack was soon at the door before I could knock. "I have what you want, so take it and get out." Maybe that respect thing was in my imagination. I entered his office and sat down. I reached under the chair and surreptitiously put the recorder into my pocket. I knew he would have given Olivia his weekly Friday stuffing, and now I had it all on the recorder. "So, do you have another job lined up, Alex?" he snapped. I ignored him at first, but thought I would give him what he wants. "No, nothing," I said. A big smile grew on his face, and he probably thought I would come crawling back to him soon enough. "So do I get my final month's pay and end-of-year bonus now, Jack?" I asked. He burst out laughing as Olivia walked in with my 45. "What's so funny?" she asked. "Alex here just asked for his bonus and pay." "That's hilarious," Olivia said, joining him laughing at me. I thought, why not? So I joined in too. This made them stop and look at me like I had gone mad. "Why are you laughing, Alex?" Olivia said. "I don't know, Olivia. Why do you let this old guy mess with you every week?" I said as my laughter grew louder. They froze as her eyes grew wide, and Jack began to turn red with anger. "I bet Mommy and Daddy are proud of their slutty little daughter," I said. She dropped my paperwork on the floor and ran out of the room in tears. "You bastard," Jack said. "Get the heck out of my office and out of my company before I get the boys to drag you out by your ears." I laughed as I walked out and into my office to collect the last of my things. I was still laughing to myself as I pulled up to my house. I got out and dropped the back seats. I opened the boot and went inside the house. I walked around, thinking about what I wanted to take with me. I had a few Romero Brito artworks, so I took them down and wrapped them in some plastic I had found in the garage. I packed them into my car and continued around the house collecting things. Finally, I went upstairs and emptied my wardrobe. I took all my paperwork from the safe, including the girls' birth certificates and my wedding certificate. I found a loft ladder and went up, finding all my old stuff. My degree and the family photos were all up there. I went into the master and took all the jewelry I had bought for Holly over the years. It must have been over 10,000 pounds sterling worth. Then I took all the handbags, shoes, and expensive coats I had bought too. In fact, the whole wardrobe was purchased by me, so I took the lot. I was always the responsible one, so I had receipts for nearly everything for insurance purposes. It would serve me well when I come to sell it all. When I was done packing, I realized I would need a TV, so I took that too, along with my movie collection, and the Blu-ray player, of course. By now my car was way too full. I thought I could lose all of Holly's clothes and a few more items I really didn't need, including some of my old clothes. A new me would require a new wardrobe, and the girls would jump at the chance to help me out with that. I found all the best pictures of me and the girls and packed them into the car. I was in no real rush because Holly wasn't going to be back until after 2 p.m. I made a cup of tea and took 5 minutes. Well, you have to have a cup of tea. It's in the Magna Carta, I think. I picked up my phone and called the TV company to cancel the satellite, phone, and internet. Then I called British Gas and Southern Water to cancel the utilities. It would take a few days, but I did not care. I returned to the bedroom and sat on the bed when I noticed something that gave me an idea, one that scared even me. It was Holly's wedding dress, sitting at the top of the wardrobe in a dusty old box. She loved it probably more than me. I took it down and then found, amongst the box of photographs on the bed, our wedding album. I grabbed the duvet cover, snatched everything up, and headed towards the garden. When I was outside, I walked to the middle of the garden and dumped everything into a pile. I added all of Holly's clothes and her belongings that I knew I couldn't sell. I made sure I left her underwear alone because, well, I did not want to catch anything. I went in my car and closed all the doors up. I was ready to go, and looking at my watch, it was only 1:45 p.m. So I called up Robert Williams and told him I could drop off my 45 later that night with a night shift. That way, I could start work afresh tomorrow morning. He sounded delighted, and I told him I was already working on plans to win him new customers and improve the hydraulic pumps that would make him super competitive in the market. I think he could feel my enthusiasm, and I hoped, as I ended the call, that I had made his day. It was now 2 p.m., and I sat waiting for the call. I found some paint thinners in the garage and walked out into the garden, pouring it all over the wedding dress. I was about to light the fire when my phone rang. "Hello," I said calmly. "What is going on, Alex?" Holly screamed down the phone. "Whatever do you mean, Holly?" I asked sarcastically. "Don't play dumb, Alex," she continued. "Calm down, Holly. What's going on?" There was silence, and I could hear her breathing heavily. I could also hear what sounded like her sister in the background. "They told me you haven't brought me a new car but sold mine instead." "Oh yes. Did I forget to tell you that?" I said, trying to sound casual. "What are you talking about, Alex? What's going on?" She started to sound panicked. "Well, from now on, if you want a car, you can pay for it yourself," I replied, attempting to remain calm despite my racing heart. "What?" she yelled. "I don't understand, Alex," she said meekly and very confused. "You heard me just fine, Holly. You want it, you can buy it. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to tidy up the kitchen." "Is this some kind of sick joke?" "We'll talk about this when I get home, Alex." "I'm not happy about being pranked," she screamed. I remained silent. I could hear her out of breath as though she was walking at a fast pace to her sister's car. The slamming door confirmed it. I knew she was on her way. In her state, she could convince her sister to be here in 5 minutes. "Alex, Alex, Alex." "Yes," I replied almost too calmly. "Did you say you were in our kitchen?" she asked, suddenly realizing what I had said. "Yes. Why are you not at work?" she asked. I said nothing. "Alex, Alex." She was now breathless, and I could hear the panic and confusion in her voice. I put the phone down as she continued screaming my name. I walked outside, struck a match, and lit the pyre. Our past went up in flames as I walked away. I took our marriage certificate from my pocket and tore it into pieces, leaving them on the kitchen table with a single photograph of us on holiday in Disneyland. It was a great time with many happy memories. I wondered if she thought so too. I got into my car and drove away. As I reached the end of the street, I saw in my rear view mirror Holly and Jennifer pulling up to the house. Neither of them looked up. They just ran into the house. I switched my phone off, smiled, and pulled away. I was in Sutton by 4 p.m. and decided I had time to visit a local phone shop to set up a new mobile phone contract. I also caught the administration team at work to process my 45, and I met Freya, my new secretary. She was pretty young but held herself very professionally, a complete contrast to Olivia. I made my way back to my new flat, which was completely empty. I had running water and electricity, so I found the kettle I took from home and made a cup of tea. I moved my stuff in and ordered a pizza. I picked up my old phone and switched it on. The service had been terminated. I smiled, knowing that Holly was now without a phone too, and that should give the girls some breathing space before I get to speak to them. I found my sleeping bag and arranged it out in the lounge and waited for dinner. I had some furniture arriving at the weekend, but for now, I was at least glad to be away from Holly. I switched on my laptop and located the voice recordings I made in Jack Walker's office. I uploaded the content and played it back to hear the incriminating evidence of his infidelity with Olivia. I grabbed 2 USB sticks and made a couple of copies. I wrote the addresses of Margaret Walker, wife of Jack, and Peter Lewis, boyfriend of Olivia, and then placed a stick into each one. I would post them tomorrow before work. Finally, I decided to call my daughter Sophie to let her know the latest and not to let on to their mother where I was. To my surprise, she admitted that she hadn't even spoken to her mother yet. But of course, I guess she had no phone to be able to do that. In the week that followed, I managed to get my flat furnished and wasted no time at work in contacting customers of Walker Engineering and convincing them to switch to Sutton. They saw what we were offering and jumped ship very quickly. A couple decided to stay with Jack, but most didn't like him much. They put up with him because we offered better products. I knew it wouldn't take Jack long to figure out why his business was losing customers, but I didn't really care. With all the utilities now cut off at my old home, Holly would realize I wasn't coming back. There was no way she could afford the bills, so it was safe for Toby to start the sales process. Sarah was happy to kick things off, and by the end of the week, the for sale signs were up. Around this time, Ava contacted me. Holly had moved in with her parents, and they were not pleased with their daughter's cheating ways. Holly was furious with what I had done, but strangely, I found satisfaction in that. I knew it wasn't the end of it. By the weekend, I was invited to another dinner party at Toby and Sarah's house. The dinner went well, and I felt relaxed for the first time since planning to leave Holly. Sunday morning brought good news. After just a week on the market, I had received 2 serious offers. I accepted one for £550,000 sterling right away. While it might take some time to complete, I made arrangements for the money once it was finalized. I planned to set up ESOS for the girls and asked Toby to invest the rest in various funds. I would pay him back and keep some in cash at home for added security. I still felt the need to protect myself. Another week passed, and Toby informed me that the sale could be quick. I hired a removal company to empty my old house. The girls called their mother, and she got even angrier and started making threats. I assured the girls that it would soon be over. On Tuesday morning, one of our new clients, who had a meeting with Jack Walker, shared some interesting news. Jack had to cut 50% of his staff due to a loss of work. He also revealed that Mrs. Walker was divorcing Jack for adultery. While talking to him, I tallied up the commission checks in my head. I had no idea what happened to Olivia and her boyfriend, but if Mrs. Walker received her gift, then he probably got his too. Or everyone knew why Mrs. Walker was divorcing him. Mrs. Walker was divorcing her husband, and I wondered what her friends and family would think of her cheating with an older man. As a reward for my hard work, I received a brand new Land Rover Discovery HS. I had been considering treating myself, but Robert and the bosses were so pleased with the company's progress that they gave me the car along with a substantial commission, more than £30,000 sterling. While admiring my new car from the office window, I noticed a familiar Ford Focus in the parking lot. It belonged to Diane, Holly's mom. I sat down, expecting an inevitable call. My office phone rang, and Freya, my secretary, informed me that a woman claiming to be my wife was in reception. I asked Freya to tell her I was in a meeting and would be down in an hour. After 3 hours, I looked out the window and saw she was still waiting. I sighed and decided to leave for the night. If she spotted me, I'd deal with it. If not, I'd drive past. Exiting through a side door, I headed to my car. As I was getting in, I heard screeching tires, and there she was, blocking me in with her car. Furious, she stormed up to me, looking disheveled and wearing her sister's old clothes. She threw a slap, narrowly missing me. Enraged, she accused me and wanted my blood. I suggested she calm down and get in the car with me. Surprised, she entered and saw the new car. Holly said she's broke and wants me back. I reminded her that I couldn't satisfy her and didn't measure up to her young lovers, making me unnecessary in her life. She then asked me to come home, saying we could put everything behind us, and she forgave me. I couldn't believe my ears. "You forgive me?" I asked. She confirmed, forgiving me for destroying her belongings and life. I called her delusional, pointing out her cheating and disrespect. I coldly told her to go be with one of her lovers. Holly claimed her friends treated her differently, and their husbands questioned their fidelity, leaving her isolated. I felt some sympathy, but she was partly responsible for her situation. Despite the mess, she still wanted me back, stating she had no money or job. She asked about her share of the house. I realized she never said she loved me, just that she needed me. I informed her I lost the house due to a mortgage default. She was shocked, but at least I understood the purpose of her visit. I want a divorce, I told her. No, please, Alex, I love you. We've been together for over 20 years, and I made a little mistake. Don't burn everything down, she pleaded. It's a big, unforgivable mistake, Holly, and I'll never come back to you, I responded. She screamed, her cries echoing in the car. I want a clean break. If you agree, I'll give you 30,000 pounds sterling in cash, I offered. I saw her face change, tears replaced by a new resolve. No way. I'll fight you in court for everything. You didn't lose the house. You're too smart for that, she declared, catching me off guard. Okay, Holly, I'll put it this way, I started. You won't get a penny from me. She moved closer, ready to confront me. I'll fight you for everything and more, Alex. I responded firmly, never breaking eye contact. You have no money, Holly. I'll move my assets around so much that you'll spend a fortune trying to track down the money. I'm smart, remember? By the time your solicitor finds it, you'll have a huge bill. Take the money I'm offering, or I'll find a way to keep that away too. Your call, you bastard! I loved you, gave you children, and this is how you treat me, she angrily exclaimed. Thanks to me, our girls will go far. They won't be liars or cheats. They'll be selfless, not selfish like their mother. Take the money and leave my life, I said sternly, my anger surfacing. She looked at me as though I were a stranger. Okay, she spat. I'll take the money and agree to the divorce. Good. She got out of my car, slammed the door shut, and seconds later she sped away from the car park. The next day, I filed for divorce on the grounds of adultery. A week later, I arranged to meet Holly at the girl's flat. The sale of my house had gone through, but I waited until the papers were signed before investing the money. We tried to be civil in front of the girls, but it was a struggle. I handed Holly the cash, and she signed the papers. I kissed the girls goodbye and wished Holly good luck. As I was about to leave, she burst into tears again, but I felt it was more for the girls' benefit. Sophie and Ava looked at me and raised their eyebrows. They knew. See you next weekend, Dad, Ava said as I walked to the door. I walked back into the room as Holly continued sobbing, and nobody paid any attention to her. I suddenly realized what Ava was talking about. Oh yeah, the Coldplay gig. Everyone is looking forward to it. Will we be meeting you guys in London? Or shall we travel together? Sophie asked. I'll speak to Amy and let you know during the week, I said before finally leaving. As I walked out the door, I heard Holly shouting something, but I chose to ignore it and left until next time. Dear listener, if you have reached this far, please click on the subscribe button. It will be a great help.